Hello, listeners. I'm Rob Perry, and I'm here as usual with my co-host and friend Julie Allison. And we've spent the last two podcasts, Julie, talking about sound, really, and how sound impacts on our ability to function as human beings and to grow and to develop and find our own reality. I think at the end or somewhere in the last podcast, I said the beginning of the Bible starts with, and God said, let there be light. So what we're talking about is God has said, so he's created sound, and then he has created light. So sound and light as the fundaments of existence. So having said that, and bearing in mind we've talked a lot about sound, let's move on to light. So can you tell me what you feel light means to us and how we can work with light as we work with sound to improve our frequency and improve, I suppose, our chances of being better people? What do you think?
Yes, Rob. Right. Here's my take on this, and this
Yeah.
is really just from the guides and my understanding. So let's just go back a little bit to what Rob's just said about, and God said, "Let there be light." And I've experienced us just as consciousness when we go into meditation. It is now as you practice and practice your meditation, it's so lovely to have the experience of just being consciousness and seeing we saw the darkness. So what I'm saying here is that when we say God said, let there be light, we are God in the sense of it's not a religious context. We have the God code. We are the one source God, everything. We are that one that are the creators of everything. Nothing exists until our consciousness decided that there would be light, because we just saw a nothingness and a darkness and said, let's have some experience and let's have light. And what was so good about this is that I can actually feel that. I can feel that that's what I decided as part of consciousness when I go into meditation with the guides.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go more into what does that mean as a human being. So we're looking at things like nothing would exist without light. If you look at planet Earth, we need light to exist. Light doesn't die at all. And so when we think about having ourselves as a human vessel on Earth, there's a little bit before that. And the little bit before that, without going into complications, is our soul. So our soul originated from its own source when we decided that there would be light. Every soul is a fractal of that source light. Do you agree so far, Rob?
So
That
yeah, I'm absolutely with you
yes.
so far. Yeah.
And so our soul then starts having a choice to decide to have a human experience as well as other things, as well as other experiences, but decides to come down and have a human experience on Earth. And so that soul contains a form of, a DNA, not as the way I see it, it's not as we would understand the human DNA. That's an extension and that's different, but some form of DNA in the sense or the expression that it's a database. So we can say light contains data, so the light streams that are formed in soul have a very clever way of forming a database. So that's how we form separation as well. So my soul has a different database to Rob's soul. But also, we also have similar parts of the database in terms of the collective as well. So this is how we're able to create separation, but also create some form of communion and community in no religious form whatsoever. And so through that soul, we can choose to come down as a human on Earth with that original database, that original blueprint. And so we came down as humans on Earth, and other creatures before that, but as human, this is now ultimately the perfect form, the perfect three-dimensional creation in which to experience the three-dimensional Earth. And so what does that mean to us? So we came down without any other programming, original blueprint, just to have this wonderful experience of nature and be one with the earth. So the earth has DNA as well. The earth has an original blueprint containing DNA, which is containing, remember all this is containing light. So light contains the data codes, creates a beautiful geometry. So it creates a beautiful geometry of the earth, creates a beautiful geometry in a human being. And so what we should be seeing is in the DNA of a human being, let's take that for example, we can see when scientists cut across, so your DNA is in strands, lots of strands. When you cut across DNA, you will see the beautiful five-sided pentagon, which is to form the biology. So it forms Julie in this human vessel that looks different to Rob in his human vessel, because there are differences in the data, isn't there? And then it's got the six-sided hexagon, the technical side. And what the guides are telling me in that is that the technical side is all the programming, like as if we are a computer program. So it contains all the programs for us to create our existence. Because remember, each and every one of us are the creator of our own existence, of this particular reality and other realities that we may or may not be aware of, depending, how thin the veil is for us. And so, in theory, when you cut across the DNA, it should be this beautiful, beautiful geometry, original blueprint. But what's actually happening is there's also almost like an overlay that's creating geometry that's distorted. So what's actually happening is there are other light streams coming through, very clever light streams, that are giving us programs that might create human conditioning or a human programming that creates the limitations in us. So it might be a limitation of, I'm not good enough to know this, or, don't deserve this, which means that we then become disconnected to who we can potentially be. So that's how we can relate light to to a human vessel, and how it can affect us for the good or the bad, if we want to say there's good and bad. And even if you go back to soul, even in a soul, if we still have the conditioning from human beings on earth and sort of plugging into the light forms that are not necessarily the true light forms, or the false light forms that give us this conditioning, when you become a soul without the human vessel, so as you cross over into a different realm, instead of going back to source to try other experiences, there's kind of an entrapment, I'll call it, without any fear. There's an entrapment. So we're sort of in this field, still on Earth, because we're still bound and tied to the light, the false light of the Earth, instead of all the, sort of all the true light forms, just as you would imagine it's nature. When you touch a tree, that's a true life form, unless there's been any distortions like toxins gone into it, for instance. But other than that, it'd be all true, true light forms. Is there anything else from that, Rob, that you want to
Well,
ask me or talk about?
Oh, plenty. Let me just sum that up in my own simplistic brain.
Mhm.
So I am born by choice, I believe,
Yes.
into human form with this DNA blueprint, or light blueprint.
Yes. Yes.
What's your thinking, Julie? Am I born with a standard blueprint that equips me to be a human, or am I born with a blueprint that equips me to exist at the time I've chosen to be born. Because if I'd chosen to be born 3,000 years ago, my existence with nature would be entirely different today to being born into a big concrete jungle. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, I agree. Correct, absolutely. Because say the existence of us 3,000 years ago, even though there's not such a thing as time, but 3,000 years ago, the existence, the reality of Earth would look much different to what it does in this existence now, the here and now. And so we wouldn't have, we would have had a different set of programming, let's say. It could still be conditioning or not a conditioning. But we chose each time, as a soul, we do choose each time to come into this existence for a reason. That's what we've got to remember. There is a reason for our existence each and every time. 3,000 years ago, that reason could obviously potentially be so much different. And it could have, 3,000 years ago, it could have been just to have a wonderful experience, or it could be to experience things that that were still distorted. And at that time, let's just take 3,000 years ago as one example. At that time, it might also have been so that we were there to actually, our soul would have chosen to, as a human vessel, to clear from any programs that weren't of the true blueprint of our own creation, true blueprint of our soul then. And then it's up to us as a human to start feeding into what might be not quite right, or we may choose to continue to be disconnected through fear, through the conditioning, through programming and such like. And then we come to, being choosing to come on Earth each time. So what I believe is we have chosen to come on Earth at this time, and there's a lot of us together, and we're just going to find each other to talk about this and go, are you getting this same information coming through? So even when we're thinking of connecting to guides, what we can potentially do is just we're connecting in to the database through our DNA. It's just connecting into the database of a memory. I remember as a soul, with another experience that in actual fact, this is what I need to do, not the experience that's in my DNA that tells me, through conditioning that I'm not good enough to do this, that I've done this wrong, that I'm a failure, or whatever that conditioning is. And if we don't choose to, and there's a lot of complications and convolutions around that, but if we don't choose to connect with our, sort of our true light, and we continue to be disconnected, what happens to the DNA that's forming our beautiful body when the DNA gets distorted and the geometry, those beautiful shapes, that sacred geometry, it just isn't quite right? That's when we start creating ill health, where we may create disease for us. We may, when the light isn't being able to draw through, because there's lots of conditioning such as fear-based emotions, emotions that might have guilt. Those are more a distorted version, a lower frequency. So if we think of light creating that frequency, there's still data in that. There's still data in that guilt, but it's one that we shouldn't have, because it's creating the sort of the distortion in our bodies. And that's when we start seeing illness and seeing, that we just don't have the energy because the light isn't able to come in. It's not able to come through us. So if you think of light coming through our bodies from let's just say from our soul or source, through, like we say, the life force energy, to me, just same as a light beam, laser beam, and then it just shoots out through every cell or every piece of DNA.
Yeah.
But it can't if it hasn't got room, because the denseness energy of fear-based emotions and so on are in there. Does that make
Okay.
sense, Rob?
It does make sense. It does. It's a massive topic, so
It
it's, I
is.
think, worth spending time on trying to understand. So I'm going to ask you then, you and I both work with clients and we both bring light codes down
Mm-hmm.
to raise frequency and help people adjust to a new earth frequency. How do you see that working in terms of just talking about light? And if we are people of light, where are we bringing that from, and what is it doing to the person we bring it to?
Again, through the guides,
Mm-hmm.
what I see or feel when this happens is, let's go back into looking at DNA. So if we all have DNA, what we are told or programmed into us is that we just have two strands of DNA. And those two strands are lovely for creating the physical vessel. And even to create a physical vessel, there has to have been some form of light. But of course, we don't always get told about that, so which is why it's difficult to experience.
Okay.
But as we know, and again, we're told that there are some other strands of DNA, lots of other strands, but it's junk. It's no use at all. Don't need to worry about it. It's junk DNA. But this is where, again, we are having a remembrance. So, in other words, we're suddenly having an activation. So, for me and Rob to help clients and activate their other strands of DNA, we first will have had that activation come inside of us. I'm going to say from our guides, but our guides could be our higher self, could be our future self, and the soul guide, the sort of soul family guides that we have as well. So not just one, it would be many guides that will say, right, Julie, Rob, it's now about time. You're here on this planet. We've given you some kind of information. So even when we get downloads, it's almost like a light stream coming down. It's an activation coming down. So the light creates a data stream, just like when somebody goes in a computer, I want to know what this means, and they Google it, and you go off, and through Wi-Fi, through the magic of Wi-Fi, you get the answer. So as we're all awakening even more, we'll ask more questions. We'll ask more questions as we do, as curiosity gets the better of us, which is good. We'll ask more questions, and that's how we start to receive the information from guides and from our higher self. And so the activation comes in the way of it's, the light streams. I've got the data codes already. I would need the data codes already to pass on through the light language or through some form of light healing. And that would enable a client to activate, or in other words, remember in themselves who they really are, or remember that they are a light being. And as they remember, they will get more and more of the light and the light force energy. So the light with their own data codes as well through them. So not only do they get, the data codes that I might have, they'll start getting their own. And this is how they could go, a wonderful client going flying high and go away onto their own challenges and their own soul's mission, and go into different areas of healing and look at something else and look at their uniqueness. This is how we get our unique gifts as well. It's all created through the light streams of the data. I want to say it's data packets within light streams that say, Julie, you are going to work with light, or Julie, you are going to work with sound, or you're going to work and you're going to use light language, or you're going to work and you're going to use your hands to heal, or whichever that might be. And that's the same with all of us. So yeah, a DNA light language, for instance, activation is simply a remembrance. It's not something new, it's a remembrance. It's going to wake up that data, wake up that remembrance of what you already are, of that original blueprint of soul, which you are a human vessel, but that soul is also having experiences in other realms that you can actually bring through. So that, as a human being, is why we want to really try and understand light and what it means to us as a human being, and how we can not only create our health, but also how can we expand our potential and fulfill our mission and fulfill our purpose, which means, we live a life fulfilled as well.
Yeah.
So it's everything together.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever I'm doing this work with a client and I see the light codes come down, they're always geometric, massively geometric and full of geometry and small symbols and light language.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's an immensely rich experience, but the geometry is center to it, to me.
Absolutely. It is to me. Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are working with wonderful people and bringing light to them and helping them find themselves. Let's put that back to where we used to be in a few podcasts ago. We were talking about the matrix and how you plug in and out of the matrix. How does this help me in those terms? So I'm existing in the matrix and I'm trying to make the best of my situation. I'm trying to leave things behind that are not good for me or not valid information for me. And I'm looking for what is valid. How does light and light coding help me there?
I think there's two scenarios. There's one that, as we who are meant to be healers, or meant to help humanity in this way and get them to understand it, and two, you might just be somebody who is not that interested but just wants to understand how not to be programmed and how not to feed into the matrix. But for us, we start seeing what becomes more of a reveal. Because our other DNA is activated, we can, it's almost like suddenly see, aha, there is some light codes. I actually, like you, Rob, we can see the geometry, the actual light codes. So if you were to look like a bird's eye view or an angel's eye view on the Earth, on the planet Earth now, you would be able to see that there's the most beautiful light codes, which are the original blueprints of the Earth. And then, hang on a minute, you can also see that there are some not so not so good lights working through there. And as I'm going to say, follow and trace those lights, you can see that those lights belong to the programming or the belief of, say, something. An easy one for me to just say is some money grids, and you can be in the realms or in the grid of a poverty, a poverty grid. So everything you do, every belief you have, every job you have, everything you bring into your bank account and spend, all is to do with this poverty grid. And we also have, as beams of light, it creates electricity. This is the part that creates the electricity. And so to create electricity, what we're, as healers, what we're also seeing is each person has their own grid. You have your own matrix and your own grid. And so through your own matrix, you choose, and I almost see it as through fingertips, but it could be the whole bodies as well, that you almost connect. Like if you imagine on a switchboard where you're going, I'm going to plug into this option or plug into this option. So there's many options you plugged into, not just one grid. I see the grids as lots of layers. I hope that's easy to explain. And so what we're doing to help others is say, I can see that you're plugged into this grid. Let's do lots of work. And it might be, Rob and I always look for and ask the guys, is there a simple form? But at the moment, it's more about just unplugging from the grid by going, I no longer want to be part of that. And we may have to help ancestry. We may have to, our own ancestors, we may have to start creating another belief system, really, deprogramming what's been entered into our DNA, which again creates the light that creates these grids. Same with the Earth DNA. I just want to point out here as well a little bit of as above, so below. So we are the Earth is us. We have all chosen to create this experience. So one thing here is when we're talking about us being conditioned and programming and programmed, I almost want us to say is not to then go blaming others, because obviously there is a chance that we start going, and it's because those people in power have done this, and it is, but we've chosen to experience this. It feels very difficult for a lot of people to go, why would I have chosen this life of, I'm not very well, or, this has happened, that's happened. And I don't know, I'm human, I don't know, but essentially our consciousness has chosen to, to see this and to go into and experience this, these light grids of whatever programming. So yeah, but we are starting now, because we've chosen as a soul, in whatever guise, as a source and a soul, as whatever guise we wanted to go, hang on, we've had enough of this, we don't want this anymore. And there we are, helping people to unplug, and we're helping ourselves as well, aren't we, Rob? Finding different ones. I'm not sitting here saying I've unplugged from everything I needed or anything, and completely 100% healed. I'm not even sure what that looks like, but we're helping people because we've seen it before and we've been there before. So just as an example, the poverty grid, you want to unplug and you want to plug into something like, there is a prosperity grid, but I even, something happened this morning that I just wonder whether even that can be a bit tainted, distorted, because it might be somebody else's prosperity grid that maybe isn't quite right. And if we unplug completely from all of it, we may, there's a chance that you can create your own grids as well. That's something I got this morning, and I will look into that a bit more.
I think that makes sense, because if we are creatures of light, and to me the matrix is made of light, then I don't see why we can't make our own matrix, because we can use our own light.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
fairly simple and straightforward to me. It doesn't complicate the issue at all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it definitely means, it definitely means it's not complicated. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and you're talking about people finding their own truth and not putting up with what a lot of things we have put up with. And I think if you look globally, that's really increasingly evident in a huge way. And we have the old dinosaurs fighting back.
Yeah.
But there is absolutely a mass wave in humanity that is now fighting against old ways of doing things, a dissatisfaction and a desire to find our own way. And this is a very difficult time to be on this planet, but I think it's a really exciting time to be on the planet. And that's why we chose it.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. It's exciting times. If we've got to keep that excitement of, wow, can you, like for you and me, Rob, and I'm sure anybody listening, wow, we are actually, I want to say seeing things, but it could be feeling things, could be a knowing. There is something, big, that's changed. And even now, something big going on, that will be for the better, for the betterment, if there's such a word. And, we will be creating the things that we want to create. We, knowing now that we are the creators of our own realities. Wow. What do you want to create? That, and we do that through light. We do that through bringing through the memories, through the data codes, through the light of what were we before? Who was I before as a beautiful soul, before I had all these kind of grids of imprints of, the limitations of the human being. And that's yours and my mission, Rob, ultimately, that we can see now every single one of us has a potential, that we are just more than just this small human vessel. You know, we are here for big things, but
Yep.
ultimately we're also here. We're not here because I want to get off the planet, please. No, we're here to help the planet, to help the one, we are the planet, planet is us, to help that one thing, and help our ancestors as well, so that our souls can, are not in this entrapment, because souls can't do it on their own. They need a human vessel as a conduit to help. And so, going back to that, we're all, in our families, you might feel like you're the only one. A lot of us out there just feel like you're the only one trying to do this, but that is our mission. That is what happens, until the families do start waking up. And it might be that it's not their turn. It might not be their mission just yet to wake up. And when we say wake up, it just means being aware. It's suddenly
Yep.
we're aware that all of this is going on. Anybody listening to this podcast is now aware that there's more to come, more that's going on. So again, we don't want the lower energy density forms of light. That's fear. Don't be in any fear. Very difficult all the time, but just remember to to not be in fear, and that more and more of your light codes will come through anyway. From that, with myself and Rob, it felt like it was just there anyway.
Yep.
And it's come through, and we've just expanded and expanded from that each time, as the weeks go on in a human, and the years go on in human form.
Indeed. And once you're aware of it, you can work with it much more easily.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll find, like, you've been a little bit off color this week, and I was a little bit
Mm.
off color over Christmas.
Mm.
And I know, as you know, that we're just being bombarded with
We are.
coding
Mm.
and upgraded and upgraded and upgraded, and that's just because we're open to it.
Yes. All
So I
for it.
think your mission and mine is to guide people through their own
Yes.
upgrades until they can upgrade themselves.
Yes. Definitely is. Yes. We're here
Gosh,
to,
Julie,
the
that's
education.
yeah,
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
a lot to absorb, I think.
It is.
Absorb, that's good for a light discussion. Absorb light. I think we should wrap there and
Yeah.
maybe consider coming back on the subject of light at another time, and maybe refining it to a small section and really going into
Yes.
some depth on it, because I think
Yes.
it's really critical to development.
Mm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
There's so much, that you can go down the rabbit hole on it. You can make it complicated, but yeah, definitely, there's not just one thing we can say about this that we can say within half an hour. So there's so much more to say. But yes, I think that's enough for people to just go away and have a thought and see what they want to do with that themselves. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you, Julie, for giving us some really insightful stuff there on light and how we can use light and what light is and the potential it has for us. I think that's amazing. And yeah, I look forward to the next conversation about this. So until next time, let's say goodbye and thank you.
Bye for now.